But it is the end of a long week, a very productive week, if I may say so myself. And a lot of things have been discussed, a lot of information has been passed, a lot of people have had a chance to interact and get to know one another. And to be perfectly honest, in large part, that is the overall objective of a gathering such as this. And I know on behalf of our colleagues at JTZ and us at USAID and our other partners such as the National Renewable Energies Laboratory, the government of India specifically, we have in large part been able to achieve much of what we'd hoped to when this effort began oh so long ago. And so with that, I would like to welcome you all here to this very final gathering, sort of the clôture, if I may. And I'd like to just really quick, before we kind of get started into this final effort, to thank some of the folks who have really made this a success. Certainly here on the podium, S.K. Soni is not only an advisor at POSICO, a consultant, a brainchild in this particular area, but also a good friend and a colleague. And he has been the impetus for a lot of what we've been able to achieve and the ongoing thought and critical thinking in this area. And we want to thank Mr. Soni for his friendship and for his effort. Mr. Baba, KVS Baba, the CEO at POSICO, has also been very instrumental in putting forward a lot of effort to help us out. S.K. Chatterjee, the Joint Chief over at CERC. Mr. Pankaj Batra at CEA, member of the planning. And R.K. Verma, of course, the chairperson at CEA, who is a never-ending supporter of our efforts. And all the experts who've traveled from near and far around the world to be a part of this discussion. Your efforts are greatly appreciated. I would like to just say, before we do close today, that we are looking forward to this kind of event doing two things. One, catalyzing a great deal of thought and interaction that we hope you'll take home with you to your home countries and your home agencies, your offices, your academic institutions, your research laboratories, that you will pine away on these sorts of issues and you'll use them to sort of catalyze thought and process and policy, and that you will reach out to one another, that you've made enough contact with new colleagues or old, and you'll use that as a way to continue this discussion. We would like to encourage you to do that because we think that that will not only continue this conversation and foster more thought, but it will also create in some way or another, shall we call them, these ad hoc working groups, these thought groups that will continue to play with these ideas. We're working in a lot of territory here that while it's been ongoing for a number of years, a lot of it is new, every day new, and it deserves and demands all of our concerted, aggregated efforts to continue to think about this. So if you find yourself in a place where you're beginning to network with colleagues who you specifically have met here or even other places, and you carry forth ideas and you have discussions about this, we would love for you to reach back to us, specifically our friends at GIZ and our friends at USAID, and share with us the types of things that you're doing, the groups that you're forming, the ideas you're discussing, and the pathways you may have discovered going forward. And we would be happy in any way we can, of course, to support that effort. If we can formalize them or organize them or offer you some sort of platform where that information can then be dispersed further, we would be happy to be a part of that effort, and we would encourage you to do so. We're not formalizing it by saying we're going to lead an effort to create these groups, because we want them to be somewhat organic. We want them to be created by you, the participants. But once they are up and running, we're happy to keep the fire burning underneath them by using the resources we have available. That might mean helping to publicize them in a newsletter or a bulletin of some sort, or keeping an address or mailing list that we could then update regularly and keep in communication. Please come back to us with your ideas and your thoughts in these kinds of working groups, and we'll be happy to use those as part of the effort going forward. The other piece is that we hope that you notice the name of this conference is the First International Conference, the First International, implying that in some way or another there will be a second conference. And that is, of course, still in the thought process. And we will explore that. We will play with it. We will certainly look for your feedback when we send you out notices to give your evaluations and what you thought about this, and the importance of another iteration of this in the future. Our guess is it's probably not the type of thing we'll do every year, although I know some of my colleagues like Marcus was pushing for every 3 months, but I said that's a little too much. But maybe every couple of years. And we'll count on you and your responses to help us understand the feasibility and what really is appropriate. With that, allow me to introduce my colleagues here on the dais. You all know Dr. Dahm on the end there. You're certainly familiar with Dr. Detlef Heinemann here, second in the row, and of course our good friend S.K. Sune here next to me. The objective of this particular session is to sort of debrief on what we've done for the last couple of days, to quickly wrap up and summarize some of the major points, and to then use that as a stepping stone to get the heck out of here. So, I'm really pleased that the hall here today is filled, although I notice that the hall now is smaller. But I know that you here in the room today are the real diehards. You're the people who stuck with us here till the very end and didn't allow. I know that yesterday there were some people walking out the door going, I have to get my cat groomed, and I got to be at a very important appointment to look at the growth of asparagus. And today, those of you who are still here have obviously demonstrated a commitment to this, but also an availability, so we're grateful for that. But let's get started, if I may. Dr. Dahm, I think you have some opening comments, and then from there. You see what I'm saying? His cat needs to be groomed or something, I don't know. Then let's move on directly to Dr. Heinemann, if you would be so gracious to help us start to talk about some of the things. During the last 3 days, there have been extensive discussions on a wide range of issues, including markets, regulatory issues, experiences from other countries, on coal-based flexible operations, on grid codes. I'm hopeful that these exchanges and experience have helped us in crystallizing some ideas, but I would like to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, to kind of also help us understand a little bit about maybe next steps, follow-ups, and how feasible some of these ideas might be in your opinion. Dr. Heinemann, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your words. First of all, of course, I would like to congratulate the organizers and especially the Indian stakeholders for that conference, and especially for the development of the last 2 or 3 years, which has been made. It was tremendous. I was the first time here, I think 2.5, maybe 3 years ago. This was, looking back over this time, this is a huge progress which has been made, and this is really amazing. A lot of additional knowledge which has been gained, a lot of additional people who are involved in the processes, both in science as well as in all the organizations which take place. So that's a really amazing situation. And this leads me also to the question next conference. I would be very happy to see a next one in 2 years. I think, looking back the last 2 years, I think in the next 2 years, the progress, I'm quite sure, will be in the same manner. So that means the next conference in 2 years would be great. And I'm very sure that the results which will be presented there will be in the same way really amazing as it is right now. Concerning the ideas, what has to be done over the next, you asked for recommendations, maybe what could be done. I'm not an electrical engineer. So far my resume is a little bit biased. I'm a meteorologist, so I'm working in the fields of forecasting and so on. What I saw within the last days is that in especially 2 fields, there was a lot of discussion and also, at least that's my feeling, a lot of agreement. The first one is the topic of regulations. I think it was a very common agreement that regulations are essential. Not only the regulation itself, but also the right ones and intelligent ones. And this is, of course, a progress which takes time, but is extremely important, as we know from experience in Europe and especially Germany, that the right regulations have to be done. So that's extremely important. And the second point is, which also over the last days has been discussed very often today, even in a very concentrated manner, which is the availability of data. Optimization of any kind of situation needs, of course, in principle, perfect availability of information, of data. And that's the situation, especially also in Europe and Germany, where we have a a real bottleneck. That means lack of data in the energy system in terms of the grid information, in terms of the generator information. Forecasting, as one example, of course, can be improved not only by having better, newer models, of course, but much more important currently is the availability of data, of production data, real-time data of the whole system, status information about the system. Very essential information, which is very often lacking. And so far, my impression is a little bit that this understanding about this bottleneck is quite far progressed here, though there's a huge awareness about that. And my hope, of course, is that within the next month and years, also this problem could be solved in the sense that all the stakeholders will contribute to that situation, that all the necessary information, all the necessary data are available, will be supplied to everybody who's really working in the development of, for example, forecast models, but not only that. So it's a very huge demand for that, and that's, from my point of view, one of the most important, besides all the electrotechnical details, which I only partly understand, I must confess, but which is, I think, very important for the development of the Indian power system over the next years. And I'm quite confident this will happen.
Dr. Henneman, thank you very, very much. I think a poignant comment that I take away from your discussion is really about the importance of appropriate and feasible quantities and qualities of data. I think that all of us can be participants in understanding not only how important that is, but in rectifying that situation. Most people work for some organization that has the capacity and constantly tells us about the importance of data, and yet we don't always arrive at this place where we're collecting it appropriately, we're making it available in the community, and then we're doing the proper analysis so that we come up with results that push us in the right directions and inform policy and help us understand trends and future pathways. So I think the data point is one that's very poignant and very powerful, but one that's, I don't want to say easy to solve, but it's one that we already have the ability to solve. I mean, we've been doing the data collection and analysis for a couple hundred years now. We've gotten to the place we're pretty good at it. But in this particular community, perhaps we need to emphasize that. And what was so funny about that? It really is a couple hundred years. Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. I'd like to move to S.K. Sune, who, of course, as you know, is a critical thinker in this area and has been an advocate here in India. I think there's very few more passionate participants in this discussion than him. And SK, can you both sum up some of the things that you've observed and thought were important moving forward, but also tell us a little bit about what you think are next steps? We leave this conference, we go back to our home agencies and organizations, we're excited, we bring some information, perhaps we share them with our colleagues, but what does the community do next as an aggregate to move some of these agenda items forward? Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Seton. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Heinemann, Dr. Dam. First of all, on my personal behalf, on behalf of the entire India, we must thank for such a wonderful conference. It has been so satisfying, and I am extremely happy. GIZ, USAID, Energy Nautics, I can't see Thomas Ackerman, but they all have been really, such a hard work which has gone behind it. And I could only realize after 3 days that how difficult it was. First of all, let me say a few special things about this conference, which I could feel. Number one, getting so many super specialists. First of all, identifying them, making them agree, bring them here for 3 days, that itself is just beyond my imagination, that you can get all of them. And then the mix of the specialists. Look at the academia, NREL, LBNL, Fraunhofer, Oldenburg, and then matching participants from Indian universities. I could see IIT Kanpur, IIT Mumbai, IIT Kharagpur, then Anna University, so many of participants from academia. Actually, I have attended many conferences. For 4 decades, I have been doing that only. But, but I have never seen such a nice combination. Then comes the hardcore practitioners like me, who bang the table. I just wanted to make my point. Grid operators from Chile, ERCOT, MISO, ENSOE, and then from host Tamil Nadu, Gujarat. I mean, so many grid operators coming together. That itself is a feast to me. It's something I have thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm sure all others have enjoyed. But the last one was the best part of it, was the younger colleagues, the students, a number of them. And I think the average age of this conference was pretty low correspondingly, even though there are 60s, the oldies like me, but still I feel that the average age was there. Then some or other, everything was just right size. I don't know how. First of all, first thing is it's very close to my house, 5 minutes. I don't know how they, so I saved every day 2 days. Traveling 1 hour up, 1 hour down, I have saved. So 6 hours I saved. But see, each session, 5 presenters, 4 presenters, 20 minutes, still some margin, enough, like a system operator, enough margin was kept everywhere. So I was feeling very happy. The other thing is, every time the hall just completely fits in. Even now also it's just fitting in. So to make everything right size is something worth watching. Right? And certainly it is not by accident. Everything has happened by design because of the hard work by the organizers. Now, we all read literature, so much of material is available, but you very seldom hear what did not work, what mistake I made, what I should not do. Very, very rarely you get, we are very conservative in saying so. And that we could hear through words of mouth while taking tea, while networking, and that was something which I really enjoyed. And at least I could also say that I have done a lot of wrong things. So that's something which you really get in these networking sessions. I have regret in this whole conference, and a sincere regret. I missed 14 sessions, in spite of my being physically present for all 3 days. And most of you must have done. We all wanted to attend all 3, but you can't. You have to choose one of them in each of those. That's something I don't know how to do, but of course Thomas Ackerman suggested that you sit in the back so that you can jump between all 3. I failed. I couldn't do that because wherever I went, I got totally engrossed and just couldn't move. But we understand subjects are so wide and each one you can't. But what I also liked was, besides substance, the style. There's always, Oscar Wilde, style and substance, both matter. I learned a lot of style, including that of my friend, Mr. Stein. So the style of presentation of different countries, of different faculties, how did they handle, and that's also something which I really enjoyed doing that. So many PPTs, I have just gulped them. I will take time to digest all of them. So I am sure all of us would do that. I have made many friends, many friends. And I'm sure all of you have made. And as Mr. Stein said, we would have second one. Now, for that, we need to, the bar has to be raised. We need to do something better than what we have done this time. That's all what we would look forward to. I'm sure many of you must have done some business also, though I don't understand business as a system operator. But certainly with so many people coming together, some kind of a business must have also come up. On the subjects, I tell you, I didn't know that each subject could be so exhaustive, and there could be experts who could talk about it. So in all, I would say that having people from different countries, 18 or some numbers, and then 25 sessions, not a small number. And poster session was also excellent. Leisurely, we could see all the posters, and each one was very enthusiastically explaining. And that was also something which I really enjoyed. And to all of you, again, I would say it has been a wonderful one, and you have raised the bar. At least for me, it's a dream that in India, on such a focused topic, so many of us could join together and continue for 3 days. That's something which you have raised the bar, and certainly we look forward to more of such conferences and more intense discussions. And then finally, courage to learn, and then courage to implement. We will have to implement things on the ground. That's what it is. That's what I'm looking forward to. So the next time when the conference is there, we should be able to say that some of the things which we have learned. For example, I have quietly kept it in my pocket, many changes which I have to make in grid code. That is for sure, which I would not have come to know. 0.03 millihertz and all that thing, that we were just fooled around for such a long period, so we will change all those things. So I will not take much time, and I once again profusely thank. I'm falling short of words. Once again, he says 15 seconds you have to clap, just to register that you have acknowledged. So you have to do that again. Thank you.
Mr. Sune, thank you very much. I've tried that thing where you sit in the back of the room and go between sessions. It doesn't work. You always show up in the next session, go, can you rewind? I missed what? Yeah, it doesn't work. But it is a challenge because you go to these, there's many sessions as we've had here this week, and they're all incredibly interesting, and you want to be a part of that discussion, and yet you can't. One day, the special powers of people who design these things are going to have to figure out how you do that. It'll probably come down when they implant the video chips, and then we can watch the other two while we're in the one, but that's still a ways off. You made a comment that I think was very profound, what mistakes we've made, a willingness to discuss those things around the drink table and the dinner table and the lunch snacks and so on and so forth. It's rare that you get a group of folks together in many venues where people can put egos aside, they can put their work aside, they can put their loyalty to organization aside, and instead of talking about achievements and successes, of which we are all certainly deservedly proud, opportunity to talk about where did we go wrong and how do we get past that part and what can we share with each other so that others don't make the similar or same mistakes. And that's I think a profound comment that those of us in this field can learn a lot from. So thank you for your comments. Listen, we are quickly coming to the end of this, and I don't want anybody to walk out of here with tears on their lapel, but I do want to just take a couple quick moments to thank some people who I think deserve it. There is certainly one of the biggest acknowledgments that I could possibly add to today is our partner organization at GIZ. Marcus and his team, Dr. Dam, and others have done a spectacular job. They have been calm about this. They have been forward-looking. They have conjured up some things we never dreamed of. And all along, they were gracious enough to include little old USAID. And we are indebted for that. We are grateful. And we are so much looking forward to continuing this partnership and working with GIZ, bringing in our friends from the British Embassy at DFID, because we know that this partnership has taken a first step on an incredibly fantastic event, in large part due to our colleagues at GIZ. And I just want to say thank you. I, of course, do not want to forget the many other people, and I'm not going to go through the list. I have about 140 here, so bear with me. No, I also want to say thank you, though, to the friends at Deloitte, who did a lot of work. They're a USAID implementing partner at the Greening the Grid RISE program. You'll probably hear a lot about them in the future. And the folks over at Energy Nautics. They both have worked incredibly hard and done a lot of things on a very quick fuse to make this all happen, and we're indebted to you, and we look forward to working with all of you again in the future. Closing comment. We are, on a somewhat more serious note, we are looking around the world today, this very day. We are seeing populations of people right here in South Asia suffering because of flooding, the hurricanes and storms that come, that bring that flood into their communities, that destroy entire cities. We're seeing the same thing happening in North America. Untold records being broken of hurricanes and communities destroyed. I'm sure everybody, whether you're here in South Asia or you're in North America, are looking at all this and going, oh my gosh. Forest fires in the Pacific Northwest, cities of Houston and now Florida soon to be impacted. No one is saying that all of this is a direct result of climate change or 100%. I happen to believe the science. I know there are people out there that don't. But that aside, there's nobody who can say that this is not having a profound impact on not only who we are in towns and communities, but globally. I know that we get down into the very, very nitty-gritty details of what we do here. And it is a good thing, because this is where the big problems are solved, by attacking the manageable problems, the things that we can address through our own science, our own knowledge, our own efforts. But there is a big picture, and I want you to know that the things that we're doing, the details we're working on, potentially and hopefully have a great impact on the big picture that affects the lives and livelihoods and happiness and welfare of literally, if I don't exaggerate, billions of people around the world, not just today, but in the future. The phenomenon of climate change is real, and we see it. And we see it right now. You can go turn on the television and see it if you want to see it live. But what we're doing today is substantial, and it is a real movement towards trying to figure out a way to harness this challenge and do something logical and rational to counterbalance it. We'll know in years to come if our efforts were for naught or for good. I believe, and I know all of you in this room believe, that they're for good, but they are absolutely paramount. Not so much for me, because I got 25, 30 years left, but certainly for our children and for our grandchildren and for the other people that we share the planet with. Your efforts are paramount to the survival of all that we know and love. So while your gathering here today is really about grid codes and flexible operations and power grids integration, I like us to also keep in mind that the reason behind this is something greater than ourselves. It's something greater than our own individual work. It really is, along the way, creating better livelihoods, opportunities, building stronger communities, more enriched nations, and a better well-being for everybody. And I want to thank you for that effort, because you are a significant and large cog in the wheel of trying to find a solution to this very, very poignant challenge that we're met with. So if I am not remiss, I believe that brings us to the end, but Dr. Dam, you have a couple things you'd like to say before we go? I would like to thank all of you for being here, and I'd like to turn over the final comments to my colleague and friend, Dr. Dam. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Well, I have a task now. It's 5 p.m. and you asked me as a German to speak till 8, isn't it? Well, but actually you took all my points. And I'm sure the last words of you, I entirely agree. They might not be entirely approved by the White House, but nevertheless, I think they are very important. Let me start out to thank you. You made, many of you, a very long way to come here. And many and nearly all speakers went through an international review committee. All the posters went through an international review committee. And Mr. Ackermann and his team made a marvelous job. Well, he's just recovering from a, let me say, daily belly. And they made a marvelous job of picking up the right ones. So thanks a lot, you, to present these marvelous presentations. And I hope they are not only for the last 3 days. They're not only part of the networks. As Michael said, please tell us. And we try to promote your networks. But it's also for the other persons who couldn't attend because we had to close this conference and stick to the numbers. And we had far more applicants to join. But we feel like, and I feel strongly, that there are far more people out there who like to know about the subject. And we need more young, talented people talking about these issues. I think we are in a brilliant sector for every one of us. We won't get out of job for sure for the next 10, 20 years because there's so many changes going on. And we need far more young students exploring the issues. We are all in the learning curve. And I learned from talking to the German colleagues and the international colleagues, it's not a one-way street. It's not bringing some solutions to India. It's about coming together, having sincere discourse, understanding what are the issues, and trying to learn from each other. So please spread the word. Please spread the presentations. They will be all uploaded on the website, including the video broadcasting done. So we would be happy if academia and who else, NGOs, think tanks, would utilize this valuable information we gathered for the last 3 days. Obviously, we would be happy to get some feedback. This would give us a strong push for the second conference coming up, probably after the election in India. And so we're looking forward, what are the next issues in this highly dynamic environment, highly pushing Indian departments, those issues, trying to achieve the very ambitious goals of Prime Minister Modi and the Indian government. What are the most memorable points? I will never forget what Mr. Soni said about his yoga lessons. It's all about flexibility. And whenever you need a moderator, making an audience alive after 5 p.m., you know where to talk to, and it's Michael. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for USAID helping to bring this up together. It has been a real joint effort, and last of all, Markus and his team get all the appraisals and your hands. Thank you so much for joining and coming, and I wish you a sunny Delhi and a very nice weekend.